Welcome to the Friday News Dump with Francis Goodwin and Gregory Crawford for Friday, March 8th, 2013. One of Al Qaeda's most feared commanders in Africa was reported killed by Chadian forces in northern Mali. The U.S. Treasury Department reported Japan surpassed China as the leading foreign holder of U.S. Treasury securities. China's Purchasing Managers Index declined to 50.1, indicating a possible slowdown in the Chinese economy. A study concluded that clogged arteries around the heart are a risk factor for brain injury from stroke. An environmental study found that 100 million sharks are killed by fishermen each year. That's a lot of sharks. 8 South African policemen were arrested on suspicion of murder after dragging a Mozambican man behind their police van earlier in the week. Myanmar drug lord and convicted murderer was executed by lethal injection in China. Google won a copyright case in the German Bundestag over whether they can put news stories on their website without having to pay. A budget sequestration came into effect today in the United States government. Greg, you were talking a little bit earlier about the budget sequestration. Do you understand what that's about?
Well, as we were saying earlier, there's a different version of it for everybody that even brings the subject up, but the Republicans are pretty much dismissing it because they don't want to be the ones taking the heat for the fact that so many people are, a lot of government employees are getting furloughed and losing 20% of their income, which makes things tight for people. Their major campaign contributors, of course, aren't being hurt at all, and they're just saying, sequester, what sequester? They don't really care. But I think it's going to be a continually unfolding story as the snowball begins to gather some momentum coming down the hill and starts wiping out all kinds of things. We'll see about that.
As more budget cuts come into play, is that what's going on?
I imagine that's going to be the case.
The SpaceX Falcon 9 supply rocket launched from Cape Canaveral as scheduled, but encountered problems once in orbit. And Boston Dynamics upgraded the prototype U.S. Army robot Big Dog with an arm strong enough to hurl cinder blocks. That sounds like a pretty cool robot. If you're going to have to go into battle.
Unless you're on the receiving end of the cinder blocks.
Yeah, right. Definitely. The death toll in Bangladesh rose to at least 50 as protests continued following the sentencing of a Muslim cleric and Islamic politician who was convicted of war crimes last year. Chadian soldiers killed an Al Qaeda commander in Africa responsible for a mass hostage taking at an Algerian gas plant. Suspected insurgents detonated a motorcycle bomb in southern Thailand, killing 2 Thai military rangers and wounding 11 people. Massive car crash on I-65 in Kentucky left 6 people from Wisconsin dead and 2 injured. A study concluded that continuous standing and walking reduces the risk of type 2 diabetes better than either sitting, lying, or exercise. A judge declined to throw out a case against actress Lindsay Lohan in which she's accused of lying to a California police officer after a car accident in 2012.
That poor girl should not be let off a leash for a while.
Oh, man. Yeah, I was reading an article in, I guess it was Vanity Fair last month. It just sounds like she's living in a totally different dimension. Hackers hacked the popular note-taking application Evernote. The website says the hackers gained access to user passwords, emails, and usernames. And the 1,000-mile 2013 Iditarod Trail sled dog race began in Anchorage, and the winner gets a new truck and $50,000. Greg, what were you talking about? Did you prepare a rant on bankers or something like that?
Oh, I have a rant for anything you care to name, but in particular today I was thinking about the fact that Americans are justifiably shell-shocked by the endless litany of outrages perpetrated against ordinary folks, and even as some of the vilest criminals that were ever spawned walk the streets not only free as a bird, but with their pockets stuffed full of undeserved bonuses. You might be able to surmise that we're referring to people, the weasels of Wall Street. Federal prosecutors love to make an example of people like Aaron Swartz, who basically downloaded too many documents at once and came under the scrutiny of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston, run by one Cameron, what's her name again? Carmen Ortiz. And even though MIT and the people that owned the website that carried all of those documents said, no, this is no big deal. This is no crime. Don't worry about it. Don't press charges. We're not going to. The U.S. attorney said, oh, no. We're going to make an example of Mr. Schwartz. And after 2 years of relentless harassment, he killed himself. But they'll harass somebody like him, but when a huge bank like HSBC launders money over the course of many, many years for people like Mexican drug cartels or Al-Qaeda, they are basically slapped with a fine that amounts to, 4 weeks worth of profits, and then they all walk away scot-free. And the Deputy Attorney General Lanny Brewer implied in his sophomoric excuse for why they didn't try anyone connected with these crimes was basically, we don't want to upset the banking industry, now do we? And Attorney General Holder has also commented on the thing, saying, well, they're too big to prosecute, they're too big to jail, they're too big, for us to even say boo at them, which isn't true at all. I mean, the savings and loan thing back in the 80s was way bigger than these guys. It was involved many, many more institutions, many, many more people, and they took them down hard, and they jailed a whole bunch of people, and a bunch of banks got closed. So the excuse that they're giving that these guys are too big to fail and that will undermine the world economy if they break a nail or something like that just doesn't hold water as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. But these people don't even make a pretense of claiming innocence anymore. They don't need to. They own damn near every politician in Washington. Isn't that right, Mr. Geithner? So no, they just flip us the bird and then walk away laughing. So it's almost impossible to know where to begin when faced with the question, how in hell did this start? How did it get this bad? Well, humanity's bottomless capacity for malice and mendacity stretches all the way back to the beginning of humanity. But it is exemplified by the Latin phrase caveat emptor, or let the buyer beware. To this very day, the lower life forms that infest the darkest corners of the business world use that glib rationalization as a justification for their thievery. But the person who distilled down to its most venomous essence the poison inherent in that disgusting worldview was a woman who was basically a sociopath. She admired a serial killer who dismembered a 12-year-old girl because he didn't conform to society's strictures. And she would also amuse herself by toying with the lives of her sycophantic followers. She told one fellow that he would be banished from the fold if he didn't sleep with her, and then she ratted him out to his wife just to see what would happen. And she was a third-rate hack novelist who glorified unrestrained greed and avarice while demonizing the very people who actually made something. And she might never have gained any recognition at all if it wasn't for the novelty of her nationality. She was a Russian who is writing in praise of the vilest extremes of rapacious capitalism at the height of the Cold War. So Republicans loved her. She was Elisa Rosenbaum. You might know her better as Ayn Rand. And virtually every Republican in Congress today genuflects at the very mention of her name. And even though she was an avowed atheist, she was revered by the uber-Christian neocons as the patron saint of pathological selfishness, which, as we all know, is the cornerstone of conservative philosophy, such as it is. So we have soulless, holier-than-thou politicians, each with the moral compass of a snake, backed by an endless stream of money fleeced from the American public by people like the Koch brothers and Sheldon Adelson, and aided and abetted by captive media outlets like, but no means limited to, Fox News, and a seething horde of religious zealots, all bent on exploiting the inchoate resentment of the semi-literate morons in the Tea Party, who know they're getting screwed, but they don't really understand who's screwing them. So, what's not to be scared shitless of? The game is rigged from the get-go, and it's rare that anybody with a shred of human decency is ever allowed to get into office. Rare, but not impossible. Vermont's congressional delegation are pretty straight shooters, and if the shadowy minions of evil don't threaten the lives of her children, we might expect great things from Elizabeth Warren. And I thought our president was one of the good guys, but it looks like that ship has sailed and sunk. But none of them will do a damn thing to disturb the status quo if we don't constantly hold their feet to the fire and let them know that we know what the real issues are, and that we'll make damn sure they'll do what's right, or they'll pay the price by being voted out of office. This is still ostensibly a representative democracy. But representative does not mean that we can abdicate our responsibility to participate in it. Bad people want you to believe that nothing you can do will make any difference, so be a good little cipher and go back to watching reruns of Real Housewives. But it's not true. You can make a difference, and a big one. Big Brother might be watching, but by God, we're watching back. And when it comes right down to it, boys and girls, there are more of us than there are of them. It will be a long, hard battle, but it is one that we must fight. Either that, or when our children inherit a Randian hellscape of squalor and hopeless misery, we'd better have a good excuse when they ask, why didn't you do something to stop this when you had the chance?
Well, thanks, Greg. A Randian hellscape.
Yes, yes. And it's already forming.
It takes us up to last Sunday when fighting erupted in Malaysia, leaving 7 dead, including 5 policemen. 4 people were taken hostage. In response, the Malaysian military doubled their troop presence in the area. At least 16 people died in clashes in Bangladesh as a strike organized by the largest Islamist political party in Bangladesh began. A bomb blast in Karachi, Pakistan killed at least 45 people in a predominantly Shia Muslim area. Queen Elizabeth II was admitted to the hospital for observation after experiencing symptoms of gastroenteritis. Buckingham Palace described it as a precaution. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but she was in for about a day and got out. I think she's okay now. Following treatment, a 2-year-old Mississippi girl who was born with HIV/AIDS, with the AIDS virus, was pronounced to be HIV negative. A huge deal that really got a lot of coverage. A lot of people are very interested in that. Thailand has promised to put an end to the legal ivory trade in the country. It's hard to believe that they're still trading ivory from elephants, of course. Scottish Cardinal Keith O'Brien, who resigned last week due to allegations of sexual impropriety, admitted his past sexual misconduct and apologized for it. Voters in Switzerland passed measures limiting CEO pay and outlawing golden parachutes. That sounds like an interesting thing. The cargo ship SpaceX Dragon docked at the International Space Station after a brief delay. On Mars, NASA's Curiosity rover was switched over to a redundant onboard computer in response to an undefined memory issue on the active computer. And Lauren Silberman became the first woman to try out for the NFL, but her attempt to make a team ended after 2 kicks with an injury. I'm Francis Goodwin. This is Gregory Crawford. This is the Friday News Dump. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in a few minutes. Thanks for joining us.